MMA Junkie Nation, we got another MMA superstar for you. This time it's former UFC heavyweight champ. Now he's boxing. That's right. The Sweet Science on April 17th versus Steve Cunningham. It's old Frank Mir, our good buddy, our Vegas buddy. He's on the undercard there of the Jake Paul Ben Askren card. It's called Triller Fight Club, April 17th. Go to trillerfightclub.com if you want to order that pay-per-view. Everybody's getting it. What's up, Frank? How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, guys.
All right, man. Hey, we spoke to you at the Syndicate Gym when it was Antonio Tarver. Apparently, the commission kind of had the same questions we did. That guy's 52. Is he still going to be as sharp? What's the deal? Steve Cunningham, a former foe of his, steps in. Now you got a 6'3" righty, I believe, and before you were fighting a 6'2" lefty. How much does that affect you?
I mean, it was a drastic change. I mean, I went from somebody who was a southpaw who was going to be really crafty and probably very selective about how he threw his punches and, wasn't going to increase the pace to a guy who, has a good work pace, who's right-handed, who's, stands more in front of you and has, a really great jab and is going to have more of an aggressive physical fighting style.
Another thing I noticed, too, when I looked at their box rec, just to kind of glance over their careers, Cunningham doesn't have as high of a KO ratio. He seemed more content to outbox, and he was the heavier guy, arguably. He was more of a traditional cruiserweight, a former IBF champion. Tarver, who made it up to as high as heavyweight, spent most of his time as a light heavyweight, but he had a higher he packed more of a punch. Again, is that something that's noted in your game planning and seeing just how much that this guy's probably not going to want to trade with you?
It was a factor. I mean, obviously, we knew that that Tarver, his left hand, was still going to be a weapon even at 52, and just he was going to be calculated about how he did it. I think Cunningham sometimes, because of his pace, ends up winning by decision and TKOing because overwhelming opponents. But we didn't really feel like it was a lack of power, even though that's what his record kind of looks like on the surface. Because I mean, that highlight reel of him knocking down Tyson Fury. Not a lot of people can say that they've knocked down the heavyweight champ in a fight. And, he gave him all that he could handle that night, and that was impressive. So as far as power, we're still leery about getting hit by either guy.
Frank, I know that years ago, maybe in the 3 to 5 year range, you had a relationship with Bermain Stavern, if I'm not mistaken. You had a lot of rounds with him. Do you still have that relationship? And if not, if so or if not, can you still gain a lot? Did you gain a lot from that time that you can apply in this fight?
Yeah, hanging out with boxers in boxing gyms like Bermain, I got to learn, it's a different culture. And so you get to see their way they approach sparring, the way they approach fights. And, that was a very invaluable lesson on insight on what my opponent most likely, how he trains and what he looks for. And as far as getting ready for this fight, I was trying to bring in lighter guys because I felt that both opponents were going to be significantly smaller than me, and so that, speed was going to be more of and volume was going to be more of a weapon of theirs than just power. And a lot of the heavyweights, I'm just quicker than. So working with heavyweights, I train with heavyweights, but I try to make sure that I sprinkle in a lot of light heavyweights because of what my opponent, let's face it, Cunningham is 205. If this was UFC, or an MMA fight, he'd be a light heavyweight, possibly even a middleweight.
Frank, I know you've been in this situation before where an opponent gets switched on you or something, but this is a new company. Can you kind of talk us through that whole situation? Did they ever make you feel like there's a possibility that this thing is completely off, or did they kind of have a solution to everything you brought up from the get-go?
No, Triller's been awesome. I mean, the communication's been, second to none as far as, Melissa Hendricks is one of the people that works for me, used to work for the WEC. It's been great. So easy to work with, and they're just very accommodating. When it first occurred, and I got the call from Malky, hey, Tarver's out. They're trying everything they can on their part to remedy the situation, but they're dealing with a statute, with a law that they could change it, but it's going to have to come up for vote. And so that's just not going to be feasible before April 17th. And so within 2 hours, I got another phone call back, like, hey, they already got a replacement if you're willing to take it. This is who it is. Look them up real quick. And so the way they handled the situation was awesome. I'm very happy with Triller and hope to do more fights with them.
Does it feel like maybe further down the line, this is something that you could do again, and maybe Antonio Tarver, depending on where it is and the type of testing that happens, do you think there's a possibility that that fight could maybe be salvaged and done at a future time?
I hope so. I think Tarver is, the guy has one hell of a name. I mean, hell, he's a movie star, really recognizable. And I think it would be a crafty fight, and I'm very interested in doing it. So maybe we could do it in Florida, that way I can, fight around some of my family from my father's side, some of the Cubans, and I can, I've never gotten a fight in Florida, so it's always been on the bucket list anyways. And I think that their commission doesn't have that statute where that regulation where a 50-year-old fighter has to have fought so many times in the last 5 or 10 years, whatever it was exactly, that was holding Tarver up.
Was Cunningham the only name that was brought to you? Were there any other names that were brought up?
It was the first name brought up to me. I looked him up, saw that he was somebody who was. I was just worried that I didn't want some tomato can to get stuck in there to where it diminishes your victory. You're like, well, yeah, of course you beat that guy. He was some journeyman boxer who's 18-30, and he gets paid $1,500 to come in and basically just take a beating to pad other people's records. So when I saw that Cunningham was obviously not that, somebody that honestly, it made me nervous to watch him hit, just fight. And I was like, oh, then there we go. There's the guy. That's what I need in my opponent. I need somebody that when I look at you, you scare me. Otherwise, it makes training hard.
Frank, I think a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of media, and even fighters have kind of just wondered what's going on with these type of fights. What are they very lucrative? Why are people taking them? Could you maybe shed a little light without obviously getting too personal into the finances, but are these paydays, are they like along the same lines of what you've seen in some of your bigger fights, or are they more, are they less? Like, what is it that really brought you into this?
Yeah, the boxing world is making me realize I might have Bella doing more boxing than MMA. But I mean, honestly, I did it for the fact that I like to compete, and I've always wanted to do boxing matches because I feel that, it's kind of like a person who wants to understand MMA. Now they have the wimp to warrior. If you really want to get it, jump in there and do a fight. There's no replacement for that experience. And so even though I've been in boxing gyms and I've trained boxing, I've never boxed as a professional or as an amateur. And so that being said, this was an opportunity for me to live that lifestyle, be a boxer, and very invaluable lessons for me, especially now that my daughter, I'm coaching her. This is just adds more into the toolbox to make me a better trainer, to make a better martial artist. And so, but yeah, no, the financial advantages too are nothing to shake a stick at. Definitely almost even probably frustrates me with a little bit with some of the MMA leagues I've worked with in the past, realizing that there's a ton of money to be shared with the fighters that Triller is sharing that some other organizations could probably do better at.
Frank, were you serious about Bella? Like, hey, let's stop at Mayweather's UNLV boxing. Was that like a joke, or do you think you're really serious like that?
No, I'm being serious. I mean, obviously, look, I get nervous about any time my daughter get hit in the head. And I've really enforced the wrestling on her. She just won nationals for folk style here for the 18 and under. So obviously I pushed that for MMA that, I don't want her taking needless shots. But as far as if she's going to be a combat athlete that's an entertainer who gets paid, the paydays over in boxing are just pretty impressive. And I think that's just because the culture is just different there. The mentality of the promoters are not trying to, take 90% of all the revenue and give the rest of the peanuts to the fighters. The fighters make a lion's share of what is being produced, and the producers or the promoters are just taking a percentage.
My parlay still stands. I got Mir and Askren, but I'm not going to lie to you. It's a lot. I'm going to sweat your fight more. I still like you versus Steve Cunningham, and I'm still going to do it, but I like you more against – what's that?
No, it's a tough fight. Cunningham's a good fighter. He's in good shape, has a great jab. Hopefully I can lull him into an exchange, and he wants to go ahead and try to, finish the night early. I mean, I got 60 pounds on him, and so if that happens, it'll be a good night for me. If he decides to run the whole time and just stick behind a jab, I'm going to have my work cut out for me. It's not that it's unwinnable, but that's going to be a much more difficult uphill battle.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, does anybody have $1 million on you that you've heard of on the street, the same way Dana White's back in Ben Askren?
No, I haven't heard that yet. No.
Not even six figures?
No. In fact, actually, I usually tell most of my buddies and friends that are more well off that do put money on me. I'm like, don't tell me. Just you tell me after the fight. But I don't want to hear because that's just extra, noise in the back of my head that I don't need to deal with.
I got you. Well, mine's just a $50 parlay, but it hits good. And if it wins, we'll take you to strip steak there at Mandalay Bay.
Nice. All right, I'm there.
Bella, just because we have you here, when's her next fight?
We don't have anything scheduled yet because she wrestled nationals back here in April, and then we are the end of March, was it? Yeah, and then she wants to do the World Team Trials. I think May 7th, 8th, and 9th in Texas. I think Dallas specifically. So we're just training on that. And right now the wrestling is pretty much almost every 4 weeks she's got something wrestling wise. So to be in the MMA gym, hitting pads, sparring, working on her striking, and then us sharpening up her submission skills is taking a back seat. And so once we have a gap of 3 or 4 months that we know that there's no wrestling, then we can make sure she's working on her stand-up and her jiu-jitsu, and then we can, get another fight going.
I know you want her to be herself, and I know the token answer is I want her to be the first Bella Mir. But in reality, I'm sure there's an MMA fighter, male or female, but I think the question might apply better to female, that you've watched, that you said, see what she does? I'd like you to maybe be like her or whatever. And that means inside and outside the cage. Is there someone?
Well, as far as like how they conduct themselves and skill wise, I mean, Demetrius Johnson is a phenomenal example. I think no one could go wrong pointing to him to be somebody to model yourself of inside and outside the cage. One fighter I probably use the most, and I don't really think girl or boy, I just think fighter. And so I use George St. Pierre as my prototype for what I want to build Bella into as an MMA fighter. Somebody who's very good at striking, very good at submissions, but because of their wrestling and where they can take the fight at any moment, they're always in control of what's going on during the fight.
Who's the prototype coach that you would like to be, either boxing or MMA?
Bill Belichick.
Jumps to another sport.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm always trying to be, I never want to be outsmarted. You know what I mean? Like I'm always trying to make sure I understand every aspect. So, I'm very much into that aspect of it and of being, the X's and O's of trying to always understand my fighter, understand my opponent, understand the scenario of what's going on, and make sure that, that I never want to walk in that locker room after a fight and look at my fighter and go, man, I didn't see that coming.
You're 10 days out. Can you compare the nerves of this boxing match that's coming up versus any of your fights, maybe your first UFC title or anything over at Bellator, or maybe even just your first amateur fight, a street fight when you were younger, anything? Like, is there something that compares, or are they all kind of the same when it comes to combat sports?
They're all kind of the same. And honestly, just because of, exposure, I'm not as nervous the last couple of years when I fight that as I used to be. It used to be overwhelming. I used to not sleep for weeks at a time, leaving up, the heart rate always elevated. Now, not so much. And also too, because it's not unknown territory. My training, and I see in my hard sparring sessions where I'm at. So there's not I hope this works out for me. That builds a lot of confidence of knowing what I'm capable of, and just knowing that what's within my control, what I have to control is very much within my control. And so I just focus on those things, and it makes it easier. And honestly too, look, there's not a lot of pressure going into this fight for me. And I say this guardedly because I don't want people to interpret this as, well, you don't care if you win. I want to win. And I really think I feel it that I'm going to win this fight. But if I don't, all I'm really responsible for is a phenomenal performance. I want to box really well. I say this at the end. If at the end, even if I come up short on a decision, if people go, man, Mir is one hell of a boxer. Did you see this display of skill? Phenomenal. I would prefer that than if I go out there and I look like garbage. It looks a piss poor performance, and I really do MMA a disservice. And all of a sudden, before the bell rings, I land one big left hand, the fight's over with, and I win. That would actually be less preferable for me. because that would hurt me. And so it takes off a lot of pressure because I'm just worried about what I can control. And at the end of the day, I mean, let's be serious. If you know, me doing well in a boxing match is a huge victory, because if the roles are reversed, if Cunningham was meeting me in a cage, the fight wouldn't last 3 minutes, you know. And in fact, if it made it out of the first round, I'd probably retire. You know, that's the difference in skill sets of what MMA guys can do against boxers in our sport. And we're MMA guys, we're going over to the boxing realm because we can compete. It's a much more fair competition. No one's making these super bouts with boxers facing us because they know that it'd be a really short night.
Very well said. All right. Well, 10 days away. Hope you have some more spars, good more training, and here in the next few days. Safe travels to Atlanta, Georgia, and good luck on the 17th. We'll definitely be watching, man. We're really, really excited about you and Ben here versus the boxing guys. Can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.